Hello everyone, my name is Jose Avalos. I'm an associate level designer community at Avalanche Software, and in this tutorial we will see some of the new camera options available in Disney Infinity 2.0. If you remember, in the first game we had just two camera options, either a top-down camera that old games like The Legend of Zelda had, and side-scrolling cameras that many 2D platforming games had, like the Super Mario Bros. Series. In this tutorial we will see those two cameras along with the two new options we have, which are an angle camera that games like, say, Diablo or League of Legends have, and also a target camera, which you can use it to aim at any place you want in the screen, not necessarily the player. So let's get started. The first camera we're going to see, it's called Bird's Eye View camera, which is located in the Creativity Toys, and it is our classic top-down camera. So we're going to place it here, and we're going to do just two logic connections. That's why I placed these two triggers on the floor, one to activate the camera and another one to deactivate it. So new logic connection, one that's stepped on any, because right now we are the only thing in the whole level. We're going to activate the camera, and when we step on this second trigger, we're going to deactivate it. So we'll do just that. And if we step on it, we will see that now we're stepping on that top-down camera. And here's the important thing. The further up from the level you have your camera, the more zoom out the area is going to be, and the smaller the playable character is going to be as well. So if we get out of the camera, which in this case by default is by opening up the ribbon, let's try to put this camera a little bit further away from the rest of the world. You step on it, you can see that it's more zoom out, playable character space, but you can see more of the stage. So it's really more of a trade-off whether you want to see, have a better view of the character or a better view of their surroundings. So that's just a matter of personal preference. For simplicity's sake, because I don't have to walk so much with the wand, I'm just going to put the camera closer to the floor as much as we can, which is exactly that. Now let's take a look at some of the new properties that all the cameras in Disney Infinity 2.0 have. So we select the wand and we go to the properties. First thing is start transition. What is that? The transitions are how you go from the regular third-person camera, or say another camera you have activated, like an isometric or side-scrolling, to the top-down camera. For that we have three options: cut, fade, and swing. The cut is the one that we have already seen so far, which is just an abrupt transition. But if we try to say go to fade, let's select it right here, it will do a fade to black and then go to the top-down camera. So step on it, and now we are right with the top-down, which is nice. The swing camera, it's gonna move. The camera is going to move from the player location to the camera. It can be quite abrupt if you're not careful with it, but you can get some really cool results with it. So if we try with swing, yeah, it can be a little bit crazy, but it also adds a bigger sense of dynamism to the level. So it's really more of a matter of personal preference. For now, just for simplicity's sake, we're just going to leave it at cut. So properties, start transition, we'll leave it at cut. Another noteworthy property of the camera is called, as we'll see it right now, use defined duration. Now this means that previously in Disney Infinity, if you had a camera that you wanted to deactivate after a certain amount of seconds, like say 5 seconds, you had to use a timer. So whenever it activated, you activated the timer, and when the delay was over, you deactivated the camera. Now that is no longer necessary, since we can use this property. So if we set use defined duration, the length of time which the camera will be active is determined by the display duration property. It's the number of seconds the camera will be active until it deactivates itself. So by default that property is set to 10 seconds, but in this case we're going to put just to 5, so you can have a clear example of it. So if we step on here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the camera gets back to normal. So you can use this property to set up, cutscenes or by displaying, points of importance in the level, like where the exits or where the objects that the player needs to interact with. This property has many different uses which you can use with all the different cameras we have in Disney Infinity 2.0. Camera type. What does this mean? The camera type, it determines is whether I'm going to follow the player, in which case camera type is set to follow, or if you want the camera to stay in place. Like, for example, single camera for a room. Like in previous Legend of Zelda games, you only changed the view of the game every time you entered a new room in the dungeon. So follow, it's going to follow the player around as we've seen before, and stationary is going to stay in place. So let's try it. You can see that this camera is going to stay in place, and it doesn't care if I get out of the screen. You can I pressed the trigger that deactivated this camera, so my bad. No, sorry. I can be kind of clumsy sometimes. Okay, properties, stationary or follow. And transition, this is the same thing that happened, is the transition from the top-down camera to whatever new camera angle you want to do. Like in this case, since we don't have any more cameras, it's going to be the traditional Disney Infinity camera. This is player viewport. Player viewport, it's basically telling camera, who do you want to focus on? Are you going to focus on the player who activates the camera, which is why it's called trigger and player. You can set it off to any particular player or all of them. In this case, by default, it's going to be trigger and player, and we're going to leave it like that. And finally, this intriguing option called glow through. What does that mean? The best option for showing it what it does, let's make a practical example. We're going to put many of these color changing blocks around the player. Let's say we're going to place 3 here, and we're going to place 3 here just for reference. And I'm using Spark Mode now. I'm going to make the camera that stays stationary. This is important so the player can basically get out of the screen. Alright, this is what glow through means. Let's activate the camera. As you can see, I'm out of the screen. But do you see it on the red corner, that like green silhouette? That is the player, that's me. So basically the glow through options allows the camera to display the player when the player is normally obscured by other obstacles, in this case the color changing blocks. So by default it's turned on, and it's very cool for when you need situations where the player might be hidden behind something. All new cameras in Disney Infinity 2.0 have this option, so that's really neat. Now we're gonna just get rid of these blocks, and we'll also get rid of the top-down camera because there's nothing much else that is interesting right. Next up is the sidestep camera, which is your classic 2D platformer camera. In this case, it will look. The camera will stay from whatever position is into the player. So let's activate it by pressing on the trigger. New logic connection, stepped on any, and let's activate the camera. Let's see what properties this camera has. It has the same start transition as the top-down camera, the user-defined duration, if you want to follow the player or stay in place, the end transition, who do I want to focus on, and if it will glow through. It's activated, and right now you can see that it's doing, a classic side-scrolling view. The further away the camera is from the player position when it is activated, the more zoom out it's going to be. So you can see that right now the player is much smaller, but it has a better, you can say, depth of view of the whole field ahead of the player. In fact, you can try using this camera for, do you remember the levels in Crash Bandicoot where the player had to run away from the camera? You can do precisely that with this camera, so that's neat. Right now I'm just gonna delete this side-scrolling camera because there's nothing much more interesting about it. Let's go into the new cameras. Let's try first the angle camera. We're gonna just put this one a little bit above, so you know there can be an angle between the camera position and the floor. So let's see what properties this camera has. It has cut. It can have a defined duration, display duration. It will follow, and it will follow the triggering player. So let's try it out. Oh well, sorry I didn't do any logic connections. I can be clumsy, I'm sorry. And let's activate this camera. Okay, now we activate it, and voila, we have an instant isometric view, which is really cool for, you know, dungeon crawler games, etc. In fact, this is the kind of camera that we use in our toy box games, Escape from the Kiln and Brave Forest Siege. So if we place this, you know, at a greater height than what it was before, it doesn't matter. So that's neat and cool to know. But the importance is not so much on the height at which it is located from the player, but rather the distance. So if we are like this, you can see that it's more zoomed out, and it allows a better view of the field around the player, even if it means that it can be a little bit more difficult to see the player himself or herself. And if you don't like this camera angle and you want to do it with another type of isometric perspective, we need to rotate the camera. So if we rotate it like this, just in a 90 degree, you can see that we have another isometric view. It's not exactly quite like what we had before, but you know, another option depending on your personal preferences. Now let's place in here at least what I think might be the most interesting camera in the whole game, which is the target camera. The target camera behaves in a way a little bit different than other cameras because instead of following the player, it can also just look at any other position on the screen that is not necessarily the player. So you can use it for, say, doing establishing shots of your level so people can see, okay, what your level is going to be about, or to give clues on, say, what are the important parts of a room by doing different transitions between cameras and so on. So this one also has many useful gameplay purposes. So first, let's see what kind of properties it has. Start transition, uses defined duration, camera type, and transition, viewport glow through. And this is the important thing. More than the player viewport, this is the camera target. Who am I gonna aim at in this case? I'm gonna aim at all the players, some players, whoever triggers the camera. In fact, this one is particularly useful because if another actor, say a ball, activates the target camera, the camera is going to follow that ball instead of the player. That's what I do in my level Remote Bowling HD. I trigger the camera by dropping a ball into a trigger area, which activates the camera, and since it knows that the ball is the one that activated the camera, it follows that one. So that's what triggering actor is mostly used for. If you want other, like say an NPC or a ball, to activate the camera and follow it around, this is the option you use. But let's make it more interesting. Let's say connected locator. What are locators? Locators are creativity toys which are placed all around the world and which by themselves they don't do much, but they are usually associated with another creativity toy, in this case the target camera. So for example, let's place one right here and let's connect the two of them. So we select the camera, new locator connection. Let's select the locators. It's this little blue diamond around here, and let's make the connections. So camera target. Right now we're saying, okay, these two are connected, but I'm not telling the camera to aim at that locator. For that we go to the properties of the camera and we go camera target, connected locator. If you don't do that, it's not going to work. It's still going to follow the player. So we step on this trigger, new logic connection, step down, in this case any, and we're gonna activate the target camera. It's gonna aim to infinity and beyond, and if we step on it, you can see that the camera is looking at the locator. And the cool thing about it is that, for example, if we place the camera, say, up above and something like this, for instance, and we activate the camera, the angle is going to be, you know, more pronounced, more vertical. So this is how you can play. You play between the position of the camera and the position of the locator to create the kind of angle that you want to create in your cutscene, establishing shot, or even, you know, gameplay angle. If you don't like an isometric perspective and you want it to be more pronounced, this is what you need to be doing. I think that's it for this tutorial. No, wait a minute. We only have one more thing that I think it's of use. Where's this camera? You know what? I'm sorry. I'm going to Spark mode. And are the logic connections that you can do. You can set up logic connections when you activate the camera and when you deactivate the camera. So if you want, for example, when you activate the camera to play a sound effect or to change the music in the boombox, you can perfectly do that. And if you deactivate it, you can say do whatever it is, like display text, or even, you know, go back to the regular music. I think that's really it for this tutorial, and that's it really for all the different camera angles that we can use in Disney Infinity 2.0. So thanks a lot everyone for watching. I want to give a special shout out to Model Trainman for donating the Captain America figure I used for this tutorial. So thanks a lot, Model Trainman. We all love you here at Avalanche. And have a great day, everyone.